There are plants out there that have been known for millennia that have been used in different health systems like traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, indigenous medicines all around the world that have this amazing property of kind of knowing what to do when it enters our body.
Welcome to the Mush Love Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Keck. We're going to be talking about adaptogens and how they appear in mushrooms. Probably a lot of you have heard the term adaptogens. It's used in marketing and health food products a lot. And the word adaptogens has kind of a futuristic vibe, but most people don't know what it really means. So we're going to talk about it. And so adaptogens, in the most simple term, are natural substances, naturally occurring substances that help the body to adapt to stress. So adaptogens adapt. They do this by helping the adrenal system, named after the adrenal glands, which are these tiny triangular glands that sit on top of your kidneys. And they're incredibly powerful. These glands manage your body's hormonal response to stress by producing and regulating a variety of hormones like adrenaline, adrenal gland, adrenaline, cortisol, and which is also another name that's used quite a bit, and a bunch of others that all help to respond to stress in a healthful way, as well as metabolism, blood pressure, and also the regulation of salt and water balance in your body. So in a nutshell, adaptogens help your body adapt to change and stress. Adaptogens are found in some herbs and a lot of mushrooms. Mushrooms with cool names like reishi, cordyceps, chaga, lion's mane, just to name a few. So in this first of the two-part series, I'll be talking with Dr. Arti Chandra. Dr. Chandra is a family practice physician who earned her certificate in functional medicine from the Institute of Functional Medicine. She is also board certified in integrative medicine and holds a master's degree in public health. She offers functional and integrative medicine consultation work and care at Vita Integrated Health in Seattle, where she also serves as the medical director. Prior to that, she led the functional medicine program at Providence Swedish Medical Center in Seattle for 15 years. And in addition to all of her clinical work, Dr. Chandra is very active in community-based efforts to improve health. We're really lucky to have her, and I'm excited to have this conversation with her. We are here today with Dr. Arti Chandra. Welcome. So great to see you.
It's so great to be here, Tim. I'm thrilled to be in conversation with you as someone who introduced the onion into my life
nice.
decades ago and brought me much humor during my political activism college days. So,
that's great to hear.
It's an honor.
Thank you. I kind of want to start off with, big focus of your work is functional medicine. And I kind of want to get that, what that is and what are you working on when you're working on functional medicine?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a good start because it can frame how I think about, everything else we're going to talk about with mushrooms. And, I think everybody understands conventional medicine as kind of an approach to health that's really more of an approach to disease, right? It's more of a disease-focused approach where you sort of name it, then you blame it, and then you tame it. But what I found in my work as a family doctor in primary care, working with people with chronic issues, that we can't apply the same thinking we do like in the emergency room where we want to stomp down and attack a symptom and stop it. We don't want to do that in chronic conditions, and we don't want to do that in creating health. And it took me about 10 years to discover functional medicine, but what's really needed is sort of a whole person approach and really trying to find the insults that are driving symptoms and driving conditions, looking for those root causes. And those
Did you say insults?
Insults to the body, right? Triggers,
yeah.
Things that disturb it, that make it mad, that create an inflammatory response that's chronic, or an autoimmune response, or a reaction to toxins.
And so is there like is it a kind of a time aspect of it? when you're thinking about functional medicine, or is it just more of a systemic sort of way, or both?
It's both, really. Yeah. I mean, the time aspect is, going back in time and looking for clues along the person's trail that disturbed their system, whether it's trauma, physical trauma, emotional trauma, antibiotics, different types of chronic stressors. And so there's that time approach. And the other time moving forward is that it's not necessarily a quick fix. It's about nourishing the body's systems. And, there's a foundational belief that the body has the ability to be well and stay well or get well, again, if it's given what it's needed, and what it doesn't need is kind of taken away. So there's a time element in both directions. And then, yeah,
Interesting.
there's a systems understanding where the body's all connected inside, right? A problem in one area can be connected to a seemingly unrelated other problem. They may have the same thing driving it. And unless you think of things in that way, you're otherwise just going to kind of compartmentalize and fragment this human being in front of you and say, oh, your knees hurt, go to this doctor. And oh, your gut hurts, go to this doctor. And you're fragmenting instead of understanding that the body is a whole system, not unlike our earth, right? That we understand that often with ecosystems and how they're all related and can affect each other. But we forget about that when it comes to our own bodies.
And one of those things I wanted to talk about that's in this tool chest of these possibilities is adaptogens, and I'd kind of
Mhm.
like to get an idea like what are they? People are talking about them a lot. You see them particularly when you're kind of thinking about functional medicine. So can you kind of give us for the layperson what adaptogens are and
Mhm.
how do they affect and how you think about them?
You know, the miracle of nature, right? There are plants out there that have been known for millennia that have been used in different health systems like traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, indigenous medicines all around the world that have this amazing property of kind of knowing what to do when it enters our body. It's almost like a sensor. It's like a sensor is being brought in through these plants to read, oh, wow, this person's really hyped up and stressed. Let's try to find balance to the system and calm that stress down. Oh, this person is really weak and needs more energy. Let's, turn that on. So many people are using the metaphor of the thermostat, and I think it's a really good one, right? Because we all get that. We set our thermostat at a certain temperature, and when the room temperature goes down, it cranks up, right? And then when it gets too warm, it turns off. Same idea with plant adaptogens. And there are many that we've used, I've used in functional medicine for many years. To respond to this kind of adrenal fatigue, we call it, or adrenal stress situation, that really help to just kind of mitigate and balance that stress response, which then allows for some more ease to the system and takes away from the wear and tear aspect. And so, yeah, there's a whole variety of these adaptogens. And not all botanicals are adaptogens. There's only certain ones. And some criteria that they've come out with for this is that they have to be safe and non toxic. They have to support the body's ability to cope with stress, whether it's external stress or internal stress, um, and system wide, right? It's sort of it's impacting the body's whole systems when they act on us in this way. And the idea is bringing us back to what we call homeostasis or balance, a stable state.
Let's talk about mushrooms a little bit, and why are they a good source for it, and why are they targeted, and why is this when you're thinking in functional medicine, why
Mhm.
these particular mushrooms, and we can talk about specifics and how to use
Mhm.
them and all those kind of things, but why mushrooms? Why is that an important resource?
Well, I think it's they're sort of what we call in functional medicine like a functional food, like a food that has numerous benefits to the body and that helps restore the body back to wellness. And we say that about mushrooms and these other adaptogenic plants is because of the power that they have in regulating, adapting the immune system, regulating, adapting the inflammatory system. And then they also have remarkable components like they're antioxidant, they're prebiotic. Some of them really help to support the gut lining. And so, and it's a protective mechanism too against like pathogens that come into our system also.
So it's both in not overreacting and reacting when it needs to react, or be
Yes.
protective when it needs to. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's almost no harm, as long as you're not allergic to mushrooms, right?
Hmm.
I mean, some people, so many kids, my kids took until they were like 20 to enjoy mushrooms, but, you know, um, as long as you're not allergic, they're completely safe. And it's like, why not? Why not kind of bring this added kind of as Jeff Bland, who's the founder of functional medicine, says, like, rejuvenate the system. It's not all about just boost, boost, boost. It's about, giving the fabric of our system the nourishment that it needs to perform well.
And that's precisely what mushrooms do within the forest. That they manage, and they transfer, and they keep, they fight off intruders that are bad, and they do all of this amazing management within the forest. It's so it makes sense that they have that same kind of effect. And so when you're thinking about
Agreed.
these kind of mushrooms, like, are you targeting specific kinds of mushrooms for specific things, or are mushrooms in general that are edible good for you, or good in these terms?
Getting a blend of them, which is now possible to get blends and powders and some capsules, is a reasonable way if you're not eating them.
Mm-hmm.
Not all medicinal mushrooms are culinary. Many are, but not all of them are. Like, for instance, reishi mushroom is not one that you just like chop up and cook up, but it's a really, really powerful mushroom. So the ability to, utilize it through powders or capsules is wonderful.
And it's
And
the
but
same stuff. If it's you're eating it, not if you're just eating it as it's, your body reacts to it in a similar sort of way.
the whole idea of whether you're using what are called fruiting body mushrooms, which are really the whole mushroom
Mm-hmm.
emerging directly from its growing source, which is typically from a log, or is it being kind of farmed, and grown on these grains? It's referred to as mycelial grown, but then you're getting a blend of the grain with the mushroom, so still beneficial, but just not as potent. So if you are getting a fruiting body, a true fruiting body, there's a lot of loopholes in the labeling system and how things are being allowed to be called. So it can be really hard to know for sure. But if you check out your suppliers, your supplement sources, and you know that it's fruiting body, then basically, yeah, basically it's like you throw a bunch of mushrooms in your blender and you grind them up and make your own powder, make your own capsules. It's
So
just
in
being done
general, as
for
a
you.
rule of thumb, and I know that there's some it's with some mushrooms, the mycelium has different or stronger components than the fruiting bodies. But as a general rule, the fruiting bodies is a great way to go. It's similar.
Yes.
It's similar to eating them, right? Like, you wouldn't typically pull out threads of mycelium and fry those up, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well said. Yes. So, I think what you were asking is, are there instances where we may focus in on certain mushrooms over others? And I think for knowledgeable practitioners or knowledgeable people out there who understand and have looked into the research, the answer is yes. There are very specific indications for certain types of mushrooms, right? Just like people aren't each the same, mushrooms aren't each the same. They have their own personalities, their own kind of energies and properties that get brought into us, as we talked about earlier. So one example that's, of course, making the headlines quite a bit is lion's mane.
Yeah.
And, there is compelling research now that demonstrates that there are compounds within lion's mane that are neurotrophic. I kind of describe it as, for those of us that remember Miracle Grow, it's kind of like a Miracle Grow for your brain. And it's not the only thing that does that, right? Exercise is really, really good
It's better than
for
Roundup for your brain.
it's way better than Roundup. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Polar opposite. If we
Yeah.
could just remove that substance from our planet, the planet would be healthier, and so would humans. But so lion's mane has these neurotropic factors in them that have now been demonstrated in, for some, one recent study out of Australia that demonstrated improved cognitive functioning in people with what we call MCI, mild cognitive impairment, over about 16 weeks of taking it. And they did what's called a crossover study, which is then they had people start taking the placebo after that, and they lost some of the benefit once they were no longer taking it. And which gives, what those studies do is they help support that it probably was the substance that was giving the benefit. So that's really an important property of lion's mane. So I love it for gut health and supporting, probably 99% of my patients I work with gut health. And and so I often use a blend of mushrooms for that purpose. And
And what's your
um,
blend? So lion's mane and what else do
lion's
you?
mane, cordyceps, reishi, maitake is in there, and I think shiitake as well in one of them that I recommend. And um, the cordyceps is another one worth talking about. I mean, they're almost all worth talking about, but I
Yeah.
know we don't have too much time.
Yeah.
But cordyceps, as many people may know now, is actually helps increase like ATP, which is energy in our body.
It's just like
And
how our cells work, right? It's like one of the earliest
exactly,
it's the earliest aspects of what life is.
absolutely. And so much of our population is tired. We are not making energy like we should for all the reasons I described earlier. It also apparently can help to your cells take up more oxygen, particularly in the lungs, and that's measured by something called VO2 max. And people who use cordyceps have improved VO2 max scores,
Wow.
and that then can lead to more exercise performance, more stamina, more endurance, less fatigue post exercise. Um, and that actually
I want all of
translates
that.
cellularly. Yeah, well, it also translates into like sexual performance and libido, and that stimulation can happen in that system as well. And we also have used cordyceps in various thyroid conditions. It has been shown to reduce the antibody response in both Hashimoto's and Graves'.
Is the strategy to be just using these regularly, and is that the or is it like a intense amount of dose at a certain time, or is it over time just have it be part of your diet?
Well, I will say that in certain conditions, like if somebody does want to bring these in their cancer care, it is
Right.
best to work with a trained practitioner, who
Right.
understands dosing. That is when you want to get into some of the higher dosing. But for maintenance, you know, food is medicine, right? We know that the healthy food is medicine, not processed food. Healthy food is medicine.
Sweet tarts are
And
not
so
medicine.
sweet tarts, ding dongs, all those things, not medicine. And so we can think about mushrooms as a way to just, again, broadly bring in nutrients, bring in compounds that are helping our immune system, and working at, multi levels, to restore back the balance and restore optimal functioning. So as a maintenance, as a general, it's why we want to have just generally healthy diets also.
That's amazing. And these mushrooms are also really good for the environment as well. So I know that you're interested in this topic, and I want to hear a little bit about that from you.
Yeah. So I've always really cared about ecosystems and being in nature, but really started kind of putting two and two together around chemical agriculture is really the root of all roots of causes, for what's going on for both our population, our children, our adults, our elders, and what's happening to our climate. And really, it woke me up to this emerging movement of regenerative agriculture. And now I really do feel that we all have to really wake up to the fact that we're just going to be spinning our tails trying to cure disease unless we change our agriculture system, unless we change how we're growing our food. And the mycelial network is it under our feet, 24/7. It's working. It's in all land masses. It's in the ocean. It's really, really important. This is the network that's bringing with the microbes in the soil. This is what brings nutrients to the plants, right? Plants don't just inherently have, like, a carrot just doesn't inherently have vitamin A. It's brought the nutrients to it. And what's happened is we have like 50% less nutrients in many of our earth grown foods because of what we've done to agriculture. So
Yeah,
I
that's the
can
deal that the mushrooms have, or the fungus has, with the plants, right? Is that
exactly.
they can't do photosynthesis, so they get energy from plants, and in return they give them these important things that they can't get
Yes,
on their own. Yeah,
back through the soil.
yeah.
Exactly. And so, there is it's a critically important arena that, like, I can talk till I'm blue in the face with patients about eating healthy and choosing organic, and it does matter, and it does make huge changes in people's lives. However, we're still limited when we have all these less nutrients coming in through the plants that we eat, and that's not okay. Like, it's just not okay. And when I work with children, and I work with pregnant women, and I work with seniors, and I see all these nutrient deficiencies and insufficiencies that are driving their symptoms, like, we have to fix this problem. And mushrooms are, supporting the growth of mushrooms, supporting the mycelial network is done by the old ways of farming. It's not tilling, it's not using chemical inputs. It's using cover crops so that when post harvest, the cover crops can get in there and nourish the soil. It's using planned grazing with animals so that the nutrients they deposit are helping the soil as well. And by doing all that, not only do we help human health, but the land mass, the soil is a huge component to carbon sequestration. It's supposed to sequester carbon, and because of our chemical agriculture systems, we are no longer sequestering carbon like we should. And in fact, we're releasing CO2, nitrogen, into the atmosphere, and not sequestering carbon. And and that is, of course, we all know, is a huge, huge contributor to climate change. So even just shifting like 25% of the land mass, or some statistic like that, to regenerative farming could actually start reversing climate change. We are so connected to the soil, like, we eat from the soil, we live on the soil, we play on the soil, we work on the soil. Like, it's so important that we take care of it, because it's literally a huge, huge contributor to what we're seeing in the environment and climate change and all the degradation and the flooding and the soil erosion and so forth. So, and mushrooms actually offer us a whole variety of nutrients as well. They carry selenium and zinc and magnesium and copper. And these are all happen to be nutrients that in the US, Americans have become insufficient in. It might not be like, true deep deficiencies like, scurvy and rickets and to that level, but it's insufficient enough that it's not allowing our immune pathways, our inflammatory pathways, our neurotransmitter pathways, our hormonal pathways to operate optimally. So, go for the mushrooms because they're superfoods. They have a symphony of nutrients in them. There's synergistic effects. So just chop some up and, wherever you can. Even button mushrooms have lots of nutrients in them. Most mushrooms are high in beta glucans, which is what offers this prebiotic effect. And think about the source of your mushrooms like they're, knowing that their true fruiting body will give you more bang for your buck, really. And I think is the better way to go overall.
Okay.
Yeah.
This conversation has been so helpful for me, and I think it will be for our listeners. I really appreciate it. It's been really great talking to you. Thank you for all of your work, and hope to have you on the show again.
Thanks so much, Tim. It's been
Thank
a
you, Dr.
pleasure.
Thanks again to Dr. Chandra. If you'd like to learn more about Dr. Chandra or any of our guests, go to mushlovepodcast.com. And make sure you don't miss our second Mush Love episode on adaptogens with Jody Hall. Subscribe to Mush Love wherever you get your podcast. Thanks, everybody, and see you soon.